Hello, Ashikai. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm, I'm good. I'm good. It's been a
Good.
long time since we actually talked because I think the last time we were talking was either early Star Rail or late Genshin when I was playing that a while ago. I'm actually so glad that you wanted to come chat about Wuthering Waves because I have been, well, first off, that story was great, but it also confused the hell out of me at a couple points because there's so much going on with the Order, the Threnodian, the Sentinel, all the different characters and stuff. And I figured you're the resident gotcha lore master, so I felt like you'd be really good at explaining everything.
I will attempt to do my best. I'm not the most well-read theorist when it comes to Wuthering Waves yet, I guess. But
Yeah.
I did do a lot of reading for Renacita. I did a lot of external research too on some influences for the story and the inspirations and stuff like that. So I mean, I've got some stuff to share and lots of thoughts. I really enjoyed Renacita overall. So far because it's not done. But
Yeah,
up
yeah.
to
I think we got a
2.2.
while ago.
Yeah, up to 2.2 has been really fun so far, especially in the exploration. I've had a lot of fun with the new mechanics and the gravity swapping and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was wondering what made you actually come try Wuwa, because that was the last thing I expected. I just thought you maybe weren't interested because you just never posted on your channel, but you had done a lot of the other gachas. So what made you change your mind, I guess?
Well, I had played the beta for Wuthering Waves, so it's not like this came out of nowhere. I do have an account. It's a very underleveled account. I couldn't really find time to sort of weave it in, and then, time slipped away from me. Hence why it's been so long since even you and I have chatted. It's just time keeps on slipping. So I wanted to try and get back into Renacita, mostly because all the people around me who, continue playing Wuthering Waves really regularly were starting to say really, really good things about Renacita. And it was just really exciting to hear everyone get excited about the story that was being told, and especially the characters. I heard probably the most hyping around Brent and Carlotta, when 2.0 was first announced.
Yeah, they were big.
Yeah, they were really super hyped up, especially in my server. People loved Carlotta's design, and she ended up being, I think, probably my favorite character from Renacita so far. Even though I actually think all of them are quite entertaining in very different ways.
I'm glad you're Team
She might
Carlotta.
be my favorite so far. As opposed to what?
Well, you're a Montelli. You're not a Dirty Facilia or anything.
Oh no, but I like Cantarella too.
Oh, you weren't supposed to. We can cut that out. We can cut that out.
Well, she's based off a jellyfish, but I keep thinking she's based off a cantarelle mushroom.
Oh.
And I like mushrooms.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I don't like mushrooms, so maybe that's why.
Well, I like the science of mushrooms. If you go to my server, it is called Shroomaroo Academia because it's based off of shrooms. Everyone in there is a lore spore. We are spreading the fungal knowledge.
I feel that you're just full of dad jokes, which is insane. That is actually crazy how you can do that off the top of your head. That's insane.
It's a shame I'm female because then I would be a fun guy.
Oh, that's awesome though. I'm really glad that you gave Wuwa a try in 2.0 because yeah, the story, the writing in general of the story has just gone up so much.
I've always thought that Wuwa had really good location design and things like that.
Yeah, okay.
There's always something really cool to find somewhere, like an upside down city or a floating racetrack, really random but really cool things, and then you find out later why they're there, and that I really enjoyed. I thought Mount Firmament was pretty good. I definitely saw a steady progression of improvement with the writing team from the very start where they started in the beta and then all the way up through Mount Firmament and then into Renacita.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm very excited. I was very excited to actually get to play through Renacita for myself and witness the developers' growth overall. It's been very impressive.
It has genuinely been mind-blowing for me, especially, well, it was so hard to not talk about it because I was I don't even think this is the same game. This is such a drastic change.
It does feel different. Renacita has very, how do I put this? Very diverse spaces to navigate compared to Jinzo.
Yeah, it feels very fresh and different, which has been super great. And then of course, if you use the new color settings, you can just make it so insanely saturated, you'll burn your retinas, but then it's really pretty.
I didn't know about that until you mentioned it, and I'm definitely gonna go and turn that up because one of the things I hate having in games is washed out colors. I like my colors super, super bright, so having the option is really cool.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite things that came out of the new patch. In the new patch, we also got like that really insanely big story, like the thing that kind of, it feels like a conclusion to like the main Rena Cita story, but it's obviously not, because there's so many more loose ends to tie up. We have everything involved with the Order. We now know about the Visalia and the Montelli family, but we have so many more characters that are going to be releasing over the next bit. So like we know that there's more to do. But that 2.2 quest, I mean, we got to go meet Chacona for the first time. We got to meet Cantarella for the first time. And then we discovered that Cantarella, who had been, honestly, from the outside looking in, if you look at any of Cantarella's marketing, any of the videos, the previews that she has, or if you just look at her without any context, you kind of assume that she's this sort of like dangerous woman. Then you kind of meet her in game and you're like, oh, is that on purpose? Like, did she try to make everyone see her that way? Or is that just like a result of the history of Rena Cita and stuff? But in reality, she is a pretty like reasonable person, making good decisions, and who's actually quite smart with the things that she does during the quest that like you might not expect from just how she was marketed as a character. It's really impressive. And I mean, what do you think about Cantarella as a whole?
I think it's bait and switch done in a good way. Like, they baited us with kind of like a femme fatale kind of, you know, dangerous political adversary of a noblewoman kind of thing.
100%.
And then they literally flipped it on its head. She is that on the surface, but that's kind of like the character she plays for everyone's benefit and for the benefit of, you know, all the things that she wants to protect. But Brax, remind me, you haven't played her quest, have you?
No, I'm a broad. I have not yet played the Cantarella quest.
You will be pleasantly surprised, I think, by her quest, because I feel like what you see from her in the main 2.2 quest is really elaborated on in a very satisfying way in her own quest. Like, you really feel like her generosity and the desire for her to protect her family and the people who are close to her, and like what lengths she's willing to go through to pull that off. Because like she does have some sort of self-sacrificial moments in the 2.2 quest with Cartethyia, which we'll talk about. But you really, really feel like just how far she will go in her own quest. And it was really good. I quite like her. I also like jellyfish.
Yeah, I mean, you might be a little biased just
a
with
little
that.
Biased. I will say this, because I don't want to spoil it for you, although I'm sure people who are listening have already played it. But what I will say is this really does feel like it meshes very well with the main story.
Okay.
Like, it answers a lot of stuff, like a lot of questions that are brought up in the main story but aren't addressed. And I don't think will get addressed in the main story. The secret behind the Visalia family, why they are the way they are, it fleshes out more about like the relationship between that family and the Threnodian a little bit, and a lot more about the Holy Maiden trials and stuff like that. It goes into all of those things. So it's definitely, I want to call it a companion mission to the main story, not just a companion mission as in you are going through this with a companion. Like, Cantarella is the main character, but it's definitely also related to Cartethyia because, you know, it relates to the Holy Maiden trials and stuff. That's
super interesting. Yeah, okay. I wasn't anticipating that. So yeah, I'll go play that.
Character stories are always hit or miss when it comes to like whether or not they're just about the character or if they have like plot relevance. And this is just so happens to be one that's like pretty plot relevant in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's great because I feel like, you know, yeah, it's hit or miss because gacha games at the end of the day, like new characters come out. So like they make a story so you get to know that character more. And for me, Cantarella wasn't a character that I was super interested in outside of her story relevance. But if that is like super relevant, then I'll have to play through that.
It is. I wasn't expecting it either, which is why I was so pleasantly surprised. And, you know, like not every character can be plot relevant and not every character's backstory can be meaningfully plot relevant. It's just not possible. She just happens to be one of the ones who is.
Yeah, for sure. We meet her pretty early. We meet Chacona first, which I'm in love with Chacona's design. I love the horns and like the red hair, the green outfit. It feels very Dungeons and Dragons to me. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I haven't seen the movie, but I know the vibe you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring up the movie is because there's a specific character in the D&D that has like red hair and horns like a tiefling. And I was like, oh, I get that vibe. Like that feels like the same character. But I also just, you know, bards and games are fun. I love musical characters.
Oh, true.
And then it was like, yeah, right after we meet Chacona, we meet Sebastian, who's like the butler guy. I don't know why, but for some reason, every butler in every anime thing is Sebastian. It's kind of odd.
This one's funny because like when they said Sebastian, my very Western Disney brain went, oh, we're going under the sea. right?
Okay.
And then we meet a jellyfish lady. So like under the sea.
Oh my gosh, wait. It was a
Under
reference
the
to that the
sea.
whole
I don't even
time.
know if that's the reference.
No, I don't think it is, but I think it's funny that that like works out. I think, well, okay, maybe it is a reference. I just feel like I hear a lot of butlers named Sebastian in the anime gaming
Oh,
space.
for sure. For sure. Probably because of Black Butler.
Yeah, that's probably one of the main reasons. Yeah. Sebastian takes us to the Vesalias. And basically there is where we actually meet Cantarella for the first time. Can I ask you, what option did you choose for the tea? Did you take her tea or did you decline it?
No, I did not take her tea.
Okay. I also did not, but I was wondering if they like if that actually affected anything or not. So I wanted to see if you had taken it.
I don't think it does. I tried to look it up later and then I think I forgot. I think I opened the tab and then didn't complete my task because I got distracted. Yeah.
Oh no, no, no. Yeah, usually when I'm in
Very
front of
normal.
Cantarella, I'm distracted too.
Yeah, me too.
That was the main question I had for you about that part, because I feel like everyone I know said no to the tea because we all saw like the previews for Cantarella. It's like, oh, we can't trust her at all. But then I guess, yeah, maybe it doesn't matter.
I am so paranoid when people I don't know offer me food or beverage, just in general, especially in games and stuff like that. Because think of how many times you've watched a movie or read a book and like you're supposed to be having tea with someone who's friendly, who's like an established ally or something. And then all of a sudden the main character drinks the tea and then like 5 minutes later they like start getting woozy and then pass out and wake up in some shipping container tied to a chair or something. Like think about how often that happens. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it's like, I think I make more work for myself if I drink this tea, actually. Her being her, it's hard to trust her just with like how kind of threatening she is and how powerful she is. But at the same time, like she kind of gives us this like idea of trust when she shows us Turvin. Is it Turvin? I don't remember how they pronounce it in the story. It's been like a while.
It depends on whose accent you're referencing, because there's a lot. That was one really good thing I really liked about Renacita. Sorry, not to go off subject, but
go ahead.
I loved the voice acting in this region.
Oh yeah, it's amazing, and I love how much they lean into the accents.
Yeah, like Zani was such a treat. I know we're talking about 2.2, but
No,
like, Zani's
everyone is
treat.
loving Zani right now. Every single one of my like viewers that I see talking in the community, they're all like, "Oh my gosh, Zani's accent. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Oh my gosh, I'm pulling Zani." Like,
I just loved how they leaned into all of the different accents because it really does make it feel like it's a bit more of a, I don't want to call it a hodgepodge of cultures, but like it definitely feels like a very comfortable cultural blend in Renacita, which is kind of what the region goes for, trying to represent lots of different parts of Europe.
yeah, it's kind
all
of a
at
melting
once.
pot of European accents and I guess just countries in general. But it does feel like they kind of made like Italy like the center of it all.
Oh yeah, for sure. To bring it back to Tiervine, just depends on who you're talking to at the time, right? Because like with all of the accents, you have such a diverse range of pronunciation. I don't think you can really go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's also just because of like you kind of I'm sure know about this, but there's like some mythology or like maybe history behind some of the sword names, and so obviously when they come from different countries, different areas, they're all going to be pronounced a little bit differently. But it's interesting because Cantarella kind of just like right at the beginning immediately reveals things about the Sentinel and the Threnodian. And my understanding of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of it was that she basically just implied that the Sentinel has the power to kind of like manipulate space in a way. So kind of going hand in hand with like the platforms being able to flip around and stuff. They're able to take like energy, resonance energy, and like put it in different objects, which is what the sword was imbued with.
Yeah.
And then conversely, the Threnodian has the power to like merge and assimilate things, which is kind of important, I think, to remember for like basically the rest of the quest, because everything having to do with the Dark Tide and the Order kind of has to do with like the Threnodian's influence and assimilation. So I think it was really interesting how they just immediately opened up with that lore bomb about the Sentinel and Threnodian after us not having heard from them in like an entire, just a while. I guess it wasn't that long.
Really cool piece of environmental storytelling, because if you were paying attention to the statues around the city, you know, the Sentinel statues, like they looked one way, and then Cantarella takes us to a statue in her house, and you know the Sentinel statue it's just different. It's totally different.
100%.
So when she told us that, you know, the Threnodian and the Sentinel had undergone like some kind of fusion, that explained a lot of things, but also just brought up so many more questions. Like, for one, how and why, and also, why is everybody else like, why don't they know this? Like, why wasn't this bigger news? Why isn't this the front page headline?
Yeah, it is interesting. You know, later on in the quest, I'm not 100% sure if this is why, but this is my takeaway from it was, and we can talk about the details of how that happened later, but I think like the Dark Tide is something that's like set forth by the Threnodian when they resonate with their resonator, right? And I guess the dark tide kind of like brainwashed people in a way. Like it's not like everyone just got like flooded, like flushed away by the dark tide, but like the existence of this thing and of the Threnodian is this thing that like makes everyone kind of in their own mind rewrite history. Or maybe that wasn't what happened. Maybe what happened was just over time the history was rewritten with Threnodian. But we know that like the people of Raguna see those statues as the Sentinel, whereas people from outside of Raguna see that and they're like, I'm pretty sure that's the Threnodian, or that's not the Sentinel. Which there's actually a guy that stands outside of the Montelli residence, and he's from the Black Shores, and he confirms that like the statue in the church or in the big hall of the order is not the Sentinel. And it's like very strange because everyone just believes it. Yeah.
Huh, I definitely miss that guy.
He's definitely a side guy. You don't you have to kind of just talk to NPCs to find him.
Sometimes I miss an NPC or two, and it's always the one that has the most interesting things to say. It never fails.
Yeah.
I'm cursed, I swear. If I may go meta for a second,
Sure.
like just to go outside of the game a little bit and into a little bit more real world inspirations and stuff like that. One thing I really liked about this presentation of the relationship between the Threnodian and the Sentinel and the perception of the people of Renacita versus outsiders of, you know, those deities, or the combined deity, I guess, is that it's very similar how deity assimilation happens in the real world, right? Because as people migrate across different regions, they bring with them their deities, and they
Right.
will encounter other people with other deities. And those deities, honestly, they often undergo a fusion of sorts. You'll start to have one god that may have been, I don't know, like an agricultural god of wheat or something, and that tribe that worships that deity moves across the nation, and they go to a place where there's lots of fruits and stuff like that, and they've got like a very strong culture around wine. Well, maybe their wine deity merges with this wheat deity, and now you have a harvest deity that has the traits of both.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right? Depending on how you get to that fused deity, you're either going to recognize them as the original wheat deity or as this wine deity, right? Like you could see it as either, but they're technically both. It's like a new thing. So I really liked that aspect. And if I may continue the meta for a second,
Yeah, go for it.
the Threnodian is named after the Leviathan. And one thing that's notable about the Leviathan is that it's a biblical apocalyptic monster. And its job was basically to consume and judge the souls of the sinners at the end of the world. So it was supposed to eat
okay.
everything and consume everything. So like the fact that they named it Leviathan is really cool to me in that
Yeah.
way. And because it's a biblical entity, you know, the presence of the order becomes a little bit more interesting there. But also, my understanding was the waveform phenomenon that you experience, like out at sea, was part of the Threnodians. Well, it was their waveform phenomenon, but it seems like it's sort of based off of a manipulation of someone's faith or beliefs, or it's like tricking people into thinking that the Threnodian is a deity that should be worshipped or should be paid attention to.
Right. Yeah.
It's like consuming everything. It's like this one deity that's becoming an all-encompassing deity. It's eating all of the other deities and therefore assimilating everyone's faith into one deity, which is the Leviathan.
Yeah. That is
So,
actually crazy.
I thought that was a really cool thematic thing. I think I'm interpreting how that worked correctly based off of the explanations that we got in game, and then what I know about, you know, the Leviathan, the biblical one. And it also is kind of an interesting commentary on like the resilience of faith when different deities come into contact with each other and they start to have that natural cultural fusion. Like whose traits does it most resemble? Which deity is like the primary front-facing one, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the things that Cantarella, I think, had mentioned, or maybe it wasn't Cantarella here. It's been a while since I've done the quest, but I do remember there was mention that the Threnodian, not only like its power is faith, but like, you know, the more faith that it has, the more people that it is able to, like, I guess, quote unquote, brainwash, and like the more of itself it is able to show and be, the stronger it is, right? So
Yeah.
kind of like you were mentioning, like the deity that it becomes, that shows more, you know, it's a representation of that sort of power. And then like the more people that believe it, it's kind of this like endless cycle of growing more powerful, the more people that there are around to actually see it become more powerful.
Point about maybe it rewriting history. It could be that the Threnodian itself doesn't have the power to rewrite history, but the power of faith that it exerts over the people is so strong that they rewrite their own history.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely like a way that could be happening as well. because the
They build
physical
new statues, they alter historical records, you know, they create new traditions, all that kind of stuff.
And that's the really big thing, right? Is like, yeah, like you can tell at walking around the fact that there's not a statue of the Sentinel, that there's only the statues of the Threnodian, but everyone believes it's the Sentinel. It's like maybe humans did just like, you know, their beliefs got rewritten. They're like, oh, that statue doesn't look right. Let's fix that, you know, and then they just build a Threnodian.
Yeah.
It is really crazy how they actually explain this throughout the story too, because you learn more and more about the Threnodian's assimilation and the Dark Tide. But that comes a little bit later, because right after you sort of talk with Cantarella, there's this weird moment of like resonance, I think, with the Threnodian. I don't know if you remember this, but it was kind of like when we're in the room with the sword, there's a statue, but it's like hooves kind of glow and flash, and then you're like, oh, I don't like that. Maybe I need to rewatch.
Oh, yeah.
But do you know what I'm talking about?
I remember there being sort of like an uncomfortable resonance moment.
Yeah. And then like the opposite thing happens when you get near the sword. The sword, like you're basically King Arthur. You just like pull the sword in the stone, you know, like that. You resonate with it. Your tacit mark glows. You get the power. And this is the Sentinel resonating with you. And as we mentioned before, the Sentinel can manipulate space. So from what we understand now, the Sentinel put some of its power into that sword. And the Phasaelias have been using this like traditionally to try and find the, it sounds like they're trying to find the Threnodian's resonator. But that really would just be the Sentinel's resonator. Maybe I'm misremembering.
I don't remember that part, but the uncomfortable resonance at the statue was the Threnodian recognizing Rover.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on.
Because like the Threnodian is stronger, or at least it currently is stronger than the Sentinel. It's like the presence that's dominating the shared form, if you will.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so like when we get to the sword resonates with the Sentinel's power, and that's compatible with us, but the Threnodian's power is like something that Rover doesn't exactly respond well to.
So ultimately, like the statue of the Threnodian, you feel that overwhelming presence that the Threnodian recognizes you, Rover, Arbiter. And then you have the sword, which is like, okay, that thing also recognizes you. Cantarella kind of explains they're looking for the person with the second awakening. And then you kind of, just because like you're the goat and like you're him, you're the guy, you're John Woowa or Janantha Woowa, whatever gender you're playing, right? You go over with Cantarella, you go to the place where Cartethyia is, like the tower, and you just break the barrier because you're the goat. But during the flash with the Threnodian, you kind of, or maybe it was the sword resonance, one of the two shows you like these 3 flashes of the 3 swords that you have to collect. You meet up with Cartethyia. Now you have this objective of finding the swords. You don't really understand like everything about it yet, but you do know something about the Sentinel saying you need to go to the spiral tower, or like the tower in the sky, right? And then you also know Cartethyia has basically been stuck in there behind that barrier. And now you've unlocked a secret to potentially finding the Sentinel and getting closer to the truth of Renacida. And it's really interesting how they play around with like the physics and the environment and stuff the entire time you're going to collect these swords. What did you think about that, by the way? Just like how the world operated up in the sky.
I like topsy-turvy things.
Understandable. Have a nice day.
Okay, so I thought that the topsy-turviness of the inverted tower was really, really cool because, again, like the Sentinel's power is spatial manipulation, right?
Right.
That would include like flipping gravity and going upside down and stuff. And I thought that was really neat because it's a sky deity. Like the original Sentinel was like, you know, a sky. It was a Pegasus. It was supposed to just fly around in the sky. And there is not really an up or down necessarily when you're in the sky, right? Because like you're basically defying gravity when you fly. So I really liked that. But I also kind of like the idea that the reason why the Sentinel and the Threnodian can fuse, like from a gameplay mechanics perspective, is because when you're under the sea, the top and bottom stop mattering too.
Okay. Yeah. I see where you're going with this.
Like you can kind of like go in any which way direction, and you can go up, down, left, right, sideways. Feel like you're not beholden to a ground, basically.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of this free motion.
And if you merge the sea and the sky, then you end up with like storms and like this fusion of naturalistic forces, which I also like. So like if you go from the sky to the sea, you have rain. And if you go from the sea to the sky, you have clouds.
Oh, actually, I hadn't considered that. It kind of
I
merges perfectly.
That. I know. I like it from like the topsy-turvy thematic angle in the towers. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's really fitting. And we actually had, so the first sword was Turvan. And you finally, like after, you know, topsy-turvying everywhere and taking like a cool gondola ride. Wait, by the way, who did you ride the gondola with? There is a correct answer.
I went with Cartethyia.
Okay, that was the correct answer. I'm glad you picked the right answer.
Well, I mean, the thing is we'd been with Cantarella for a while, and I had more to learn from Cartethyia than Cantarella, so I picked Cartethyia.
That's actually the same reason I picked it. Yeah, it was because we had spent the whole quest with Cantarella thus far, and I was kind of like, okay, I want to see what she has to say. Because we didn't, I think at that point, she was the person we knew the least about between the two, and obviously she was going to be like a big part of the quest. So I was like, okay, I want to know the lore. We get to the turban spot, and we get that flashback, right? And the flashback is the initial coronation, you know, where she has like the really long, like, cape looking thing, dress, and then they're like, oh, what do you choose? Salvation. But you kind of like notice that after that, the Sentinel's frequency increases in Rover's tacit mark, which is like the, you know, the thing on your hand. And then at that point, Cartethyia is like, wait a second, so what is this? Because she gets like some of her memories back, but not everything. So now she's not sure. I mean, the entire quest, she's been unsure if she's the Sentinel or Threnodian's resonator. Like, she felt like she was the Threnodian's resonator, but she wasn't 100% sure, and she was really hopeful that she was wrong. But then we get to Hogness. Again, I might be butchering the pronunciation. What was this sword based off of? Do you know?
So both Tyrfang and Hogness are based off of swords from Norse mythology. Hogness was named after Hogni, who had a blade named Daneslif, which was a blade that could never be sheathed until it had killed its opponent.
You know, I knew you would have an answer for this, by the way. Like, I was just like, I know if I ask this question, she's gonna know. Okay, keep going, sorry.
Tyrfing is kind of fun. I know they say Tyrvine. They're using slightly altered names from the originals, but Tyrfing, which is what Tyrvine is based off of, is from the Tyrfing cycle, which is from the Poetic Edda, and that is also about a sword. Well, Tyrfing is the name of the sword that also couldn't be sheathed unless it was still warm with blood.
Okay.
So I think it's really cool that both the Hogness blade and the Tyrfing blade are the same theme overall.
Yeah, but they're kind of different swords, because the Tyrfang, or Turvan, as I've been calling it, it gave us the Sentinel's energy, right? Because the Sentinel had imbued that sword. Hogness is kind of different because if I remember correctly, that was the was that the Discord one, the one that was the Threnodian looking sword? I mean, it looked very Leviathan like. I might have to double check this real quick, but I believe that the second sword was the sword of Discord. That one we actually got some resonance energy from the Threnodian, I believe. After that, we get to see Cartethia's past, and we get to see her resisting the Threnodian. So it was really interesting because yes, we find out, yeah, she's resonating with the Threnodian. She is the Threnodian's resonator, but she is resisting that influence. So we still know that she's like on our side. We don't know what the motivation is, but like we know that she is fighting for humanity in that backstory, which I think was a really revealing point about Cartethia's character.
So I kind of like the order here too, because Tyrfang was a sword that was capable of killing a god. So if that's like the first sword that contains the Sentinel's power, it's kind of fitting because it was almost like it sort of represented the death of the original Sentinel in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because they took their power and put it into the sword. And it was like, that was their moment when they kind of died. So like Tyrfing also functioning as the key to the tower and also one of the keys to the barrier is really neat in that context. Whereas I don't remember much about the poem that Daneslif is from, the Hogni sword. But I don't remember it being used to kill a deity, but it was like a sword of battle. So if she uses it to resist forces, then that's actually pretty thematically on point.
That would make a lot of sense, like kind of battle theme, because like that's when you see her, you know, this is where she's resisting that influence. And then of course the third sword, it's spelled like Haltir, but I don't believe that's the original name for it at all. And I'm pretty sure even in game they don't pronounce it that way.
Yeah, I was really struggling with this one because like I was like, if the first two are based off of Norse swords, then this one should also be based off of a Norse sword. But in looking at the original Chinese text, it seems to actually be a reference to the Hot Claire.
Huh.
And I don't know if I honestly don't remember how they pronounced it because I feel like every time they pronounced it, it was slightly different.
Yeah. Accents and all that.
And so I had to look it up later because I couldn't remember like what is this sword's name, so I could figure out what it was. But I think it's Hot Claire, and that would actually not be from Norse mythology, but it would actually be from what's it called? Song of Roland. That's what it was called.
Oh, right.
This is a French epic. It describes some events during the ruler of Emperor Charlemagne. So it's very French. So we went from very Germanic mythology to French mythology. But Hot Claire is a very popular name for swords and axes even in a lot of different video games and comics and stuff like that. So I recognized that, and then I had to look up where it came from.
I mean, it seems like every single one of these, well, actually, I do think it's a bit funny that it's like, okay, now we go Norse and then French all of a sudden, right?
Duck, goose.
Yeah, basically that. But it kind of fits in with Renacita and just like Raguna, because like it is kind of like a hot pot of all of these different European countries, folklores, and stories. But like when we get to the third sword, this is the one that was where you get the flashback of Cartethyia and you find out that she was created by the Threnodian, like 100%. Because before, you know, she's just resisting the influence of the Threnodian, but like we don't know how she came to be. Maybe she was just born and raised like a normal person, right? But no, she was literally a being created by the Threnodian. And Cartethyia at this point remembers everything, remembers that the Sentinel's body was essentially like completely destroyed and overtaken by the Threnodian. And this is something that happened a really long time ago. So this reveal was quite big actually, because we got bits and pieces of the lore about the Threnodian overtaking the Sentinel throughout the quest. But like when this last piece kind of falls into place, and then you learn about how Fleur de Lis is the part of Cartethyia that split off, it also helps explain the Sentinel's power even more. Because without the Sentinel's power, Cartethyia would not have been able to put her power into, basically like split herself off into two sections, Fleur de Lis and Cartethyia. And the only way she was able to stop herself from becoming the Threnodian's vessel and wreaking havoc and summoning another dark tide was by splitting off herself into basically these two pieces. One of them is significantly stronger, it looks like, the Threnodian portion, Fleur de Lis, because the Threnodian had already overtaken so much of the Sentinel's power. Now, I think this, I don't remember when this information was given, if this was later in the story or if this is in 2.0, but I do know that part of the reason that the Sentinel was like weaker and just kind of fell off L plus ratio to the Threnodian was because the Threnodian came in during a time when the Sentinel had given some of that power to, I don't remember if it was to the sword or if it's to the first Primus, but we know that the first Primus went and fought off one of the dark tides using basically the power of the Sentinel. And it's like, in order to do that, the Sentinel weakened themselves significantly. And then the Threnodian was like, yoink my body now. And then that's, you know, the rest is history. So it's crazy because now Cartethyia is in this position where she has this other part of herself, and her options, the way she sees her options, are for her to fuse with that other part of herself and become a vessel for the Threnodian, and then just hope you can just like trap them up in the sky, or they have to die because the Threnodian can't be killed.
With any evil that you can't kill, you always seal it. And then thousands of years later, some smart person decides, hey, what if I opened this door that says do not open?
Yeah, so obviously Rover wants to do that another way. Rover doesn't want to have to kill off Cartethyia. Rover would rather just like solve the issue. What's interesting is like how the issue gets resolved. So basically the Rover stomps off like, I'm him, I'm John Arbiter, I'm gonna go kill the boss. And then as the Rover leaves, Cantarella shows up, which is like, okay, hello Cantarella, we haven't seen you since the second campfire, right? And she comes in. She basically reveals that like she's the Blessed Maiden, right? And then Cartethyia is the fake Blessed Maiden. Cantarella takes her power that she got from her second awakening, the Sentinel's power that allows you to manipulate sort of space and energy and things like that, back to the Sentinel, which like through Cartethyia basically makes Cartethyia the new real Blessed Maiden. And I don't know exactly how the science of this works in Wuthering Waves, where like if you split yourself in half, can you be a resonator for both? But I guess maybe that worked. I don't know. We know that Cartethyia ends up becoming the sword though that Rover fights with, and then it sort of hit me like, oh my gosh, the sword. We put the sword through Fleur de Lis. Like that was at first I interpreted that as some sort of like joining of Cartethyia and Fleur de Lis, but then I realized like, no, this is a mutually assured destruction. Like both parts of them are now gone. Now, of course, there's the end point of that where the Sentinel saves Cartethyia, and you know, we could talk about that all day, but I just thought that was such a cool execution. Even though I feel like I interpreted it wrong the first time through, even then, in my incorrect interpretation, it was just such a cool moment, and they did some really cool stuff with the visuals there. Holy yapsophone. I thought it was like super cool though, and I don't know if you noticed like the fragments that were falling after the fact, and that you could see like the Threnodian and some of the fragments.
I thought that premise was kind of interesting because this game is built off of sound. All of the mechanics are based off of sound and music and things like that. So when I thought about a resonator for a Sentinel, I was thinking like, oh, this is like a violinist playing a piece of music. So the Sentinel would be the music or maybe even the instrument. And then the music that they play together is like the song that they play. So if I was to think of like what would happen if you fused two entities or two different instruments together, you would have to have someone who can either play two instruments at once or has to learn how to play or figure out like a whole new instrument. It's kind of like a keytar, right? Like if you fuse a keyboard and a guitar, you get a keytar. So
Yeah.
I was thinking like, what if the Sentinel is like the keyboard? You know, Cantarella knows how to play the keyboard. She's talented in that. She knows what song to play.
Yeah.
And then the Leviathan is a guitar, and Cartethyia is the one who's supposed to be playing the guitar. She knows how to play that. She knows what melody to play. But now the Sentinel and the Threnodian fused, so now they have a keytar, and neither Cantarella nor Cartethyia know how to play a keytar because it's not a guitar or a keyboard.
Right.
And
yeah.
so if you tried to play it as a keyboard, you'd have a discordant melody. And if you tried to play it as a guitar, you'd have a discordant melody. So you'd have to try and find a way to harmonize the two. So like the way I was thinking about it was like Cantarella was like imparting her knowledge or her talent. And then it was up to us to help Cartethyia merge her knowledge of playing a guitar and a knowledge of playing a keyboard into how to play a keytar, which would allow her to resonate with both concepts of Sentinel and Threnodian at the same time. Alternatively, it could just be that they're both two different songs that are not in the same key, and you have to figure out how to get them into the same key so that they harmonize with each other. Otherwise, you just have noise.
Yeah, it's like the one the like progression of pop music, and then like you have another progression of pop music in like a different key. And so it would work if you threw any song on top of it in the right key, but they're not. So
Yes. Yeah, something like that. That's a pretty good way to put it, which is very fitting coming from someone who actually studied music, which I didn't, hence why I was talking about guitars and not something, a bit more sophisticated.
I say studied music, but like at the end of the day, I didn't flex those brain muscles in years, so it's all a distant memory now. But
it's more than I got.
yeah. Well, I'm always very surprised because you always like pull out these references that are like, oh yeah, this opera back then, and I'm like, damn, I took a music history class and I have no idea what you're talking about.
I think one thing I like, this is off topic a little bit, but it's kind of a fun thing, but one thing I really like about video games that reference real world stuff, like in Renacita, how you're referencing real world cultures, or you're referencing like the different swords from Norse mythology and things like that, is that you start to learn about why these elements of history mattered within the context that they were in. And I think that is really cool because it helps me remember aspects of history that I otherwise would have just written off as, oh, it's just a throwaway thing. Like some person made this forever ago. It doesn't really matter. Well, no, it does matter, right? Like Song of Roland, which is what the Haute Claire is from, like that epic mattered. And then, but to understand why it matters, now you have to learn about Charlemagne. Now you got to learn about France. Who wants to learn about France on their own? I don't, and I'm French. So I like that aspect a lot, and trying to figure out how the external influences play into the game, because I feel like it makes games more special.
Oh yeah.
I think it also helps create tighter connections to the things that happen in the games, and I think it makes things more memorable as well.
It's so funny because I totally get that. I was in one of my key gaming memories playing Assassin's Creed 3. Well, no, sorry, not 3. Assassin's Creed 2. While being in AP European history. And then I was like, anytime they would talk about something that happened, I was like, oh, that's like this time. Like, wait, that's like real life. No way. Or like, wait, that happened in the video game. And I obviously didn't say that out loud because I think people would have like, killed me or something. But either way, I thought it was kind of interesting how you can like really make these connections and understand the story and lore better if you know the history surrounding even things that like what it might be inspired by.
Yeah, even the architecture, right? Like,
oh, the architecture. It's one of my favorite things actually about
I love the history that's contained within the architecture because it tells a story.
It seems very random, but then you're like, oh, okay. I guess going back to the story, got a little sidetracked.
That's my specialty, sidetracking.
That's okay. So there was this one thing, and I personally feel like this is like a cop out for a character death, and you can let me know how you think of it. Okay. The reason the Sentinel survived everything, and the reason that, I mean, obviously I feel like it's very difficult to like actually kill a Sentinel or Threnodian, right? But like the Sentinel is like, oh, I hid code away somewhere, basically. Like the core of the Sentinel, or like the core code of the Sentinel was like hidden and inaccessible, which allowed it to live through everything and survive and persevere and still be the Sentinel. But the thing is, like, the Sentinel basically goes, oh yeah, by the way, you know, you could just have all my power and then Cartethyia can live. And I kind of feel like that is, for me, whenever I see that in a game where I'm like, ah, yes, this guy was like very close to death or going to die, and now they're just going to trade their life with this other person. I don't know, maybe it's just because I see it like overused a lot, but what do you think about that? Because I feel like it was a really good thing that Cartethyia lived, but at the same time, I feel like it was kind of just like a shoe-in. Oh, we're just going to do this so we can sell the character later.
Well, I agree with you on the cop-out kind of thing, in the sense of like, I don't usually like the sacrifice so one person can live, or I do feel like it cheapens the original sacrifice oftentimes.
Yeah.
You know, like the fact that Cartethyia was willing to go through to such lengths to accomplish her goal, I thought that was pretty special and would have made her character really powerful, honestly. I kind of felt a similar way with the Shorekeeper when we went through her story.
Yeah, because
I thought I thought it might have been better if they hadn't saved her, and if part of the story going forward would have been to also find a way to bring her back, because that would have applied a bit more consequence. I think that could have worked pretty well for Cartethyia too. At the same time though, because she had already been split into multiple pieces, you know, she had aspects of two entities, you know, and also the fact that she was made by a Threnodian to start with kind of means she's not really human and therefore not exactly subject to the same laws, although you could also say that for the Shorekeeper, since she's kind of like a musical AI. So they're not really subject to the same rules. So, I mean, I'm with you on, I think I would have liked there to be more consequence. I don't know, maybe she has to get a new identity now.
Yeah, well, she's not
she
Cartethyia
forgot
anymore.
everything. Yeah, things like that. I think that would have been a pretty good thing to do. I didn't find the source code being hidden of the Sentinel to be honestly all that problematic, if only because we were still talking about deities and then questions of faith. Remember how we talked about how the Leviathan kind of like is like a fusion of deities, and therefore it's like consuming other faiths by making people worship it. If you look at the quote unquote source code, as you put it, as like an original holy text, right? Like an original holy record from the Sentinel or the original deity that got consumed by a new one and that got hidden somewhere, then like that deity will continue to exist so long as those records exist, because one day there will be people who will discover them and then rediscover the past and uncover like what the truth was, and then that rebuilds faith again.
Yeah.
So I think that part is okay for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think like ultimately, yeah, if you think about it from the view of like deities like gaining the faith of the people and from like from that sort of, I guess, conduit, it makes sense. Maybe it's like a jaded of me, because I feel like we have so many opportunities where it's like, wow, this character looks like they're ready to sacrifice themselves, right? And then they go to do it, and then actually I'm back. What's up, guys? How's it going? Let's get coffee, you know, that kind of thing. But I do think that like of all of the ones that we've seen across a lot of the games that I've played, I feel like this one is like a little bit more justified. I was surprised they did it though, actually. Like if you want my honest opinion, I was very surprised that they were just gonna like bring her back, because like we saw the sword go straight through her. I was like, that character's pretty dead to me.
Didn't she kind of become the Sentinel though?
Kind of. I mean, she's not, so she took the Sentinel's power.
I think it depends on like what like Sentinels are kind of like managers of the world, you know.
Yeah.
I think, you know, a trope is never bad in isolation.
Okay.
I think it really depends on the execution, because you can take a bad trope and execute it really well, right?
That's true,
like,
yeah.
Tropes are tropes for a reason. It's just like when something is overdone or it's cheapened or it feels like it doesn't happen for a reason or it pulls away from the original intention of the writers or things like that. I think that's when tropes really fall short. In Cartethia's case, she didn't come out completely unscathed. She doesn't get to be a normal girl walking along the beach, living the life she chooses. She is and forever will be the holy maiden and the resonator of the Sentinel Threnodian kind of dealio.
Yeah.
And she will always live by those restrictions. So it's not like she didn't lose anything.
That's true. And she actually chose, so I don't know if you caught this as well, but in the ending dialogues, I guess it's not even something to catch, it's just something they talked about. They basically gave her a choice if she wanted to continue to be herself or if she wanted a clean slate. Because the Sentinel was like, yo, I can erase your memories if you want to forget all the bad things that happened to you, all the trauma and all the strife, and if you want to just move on. And she chose to live with that, which I think is really powerful and indicative of like a very strongly written character.
Thing she says to Rover that I thought was really interesting, because throughout this whole thing, she's like recognizing Rover's strength and then saying like, you know what, I need to be stronger than you.
Yeah.
Like I got work to do. And then Rover's like, well, you make me sound like a villain.
Yep.
And she doesn't deny it, which I think is really interesting. She's just like, yeah, but like if that ever happened, she doesn't discount the possibility. Like if that ever happened, I mean, I should be able to, crush you, know.
Yeah.
Like,
it was honestly really cute. I was like, oh, like that's kind of a cool like little rivalry thing. I hope they don't drop that. I hope they just keep that forever. I love when games show you like alternate versions of like what the world could be like. I think one of my favorite things about this is anime ReZero. I really like it because like it shows Subaru dies and then he like restarts from a save point, and then like the author would write these different stories about what happens if he chose to do this instead, and then his save happened. Like how would it progress? I would love to see like in this hypothetical scenario like a universe where the Sentinels were just like, okay boss, yeah, and then it's like, holy shit, everything's gone or fucked up or like bad.
Well, you have the Cartethyia system, right? Like potentially you have a supercomputer that's capable of saying, well, this is what would have happened. This is what the original plan was. And maybe like that's a whole level. Maybe that's one of the returns to the Black Shores where like you go through the Cartethyia system and the Shorekeeper leads you through the original plan.
Yeah.
And you get to experience the death of like every nation or something crazy, right? I don't know what Rover's plan would be. I haven't dug that deep. This is just where my brain went from a narrative perspective. Like they have all the tools to be able to like pull this off basically whenever they want to.
Yeah, that's
if they want to.
It's so interesting how your brain works, actually. Like, that's like impressive that you like came up with all of this off the top of your head. This turned from like a discussion about the quest to like the future of Wuthering Waves.
Yeah, that's when I say my specialty is getting sidetracked. This is it. Going off on a really long tangent about, hey, what if they did this? What if this possible? What if? You always got to be thinking about the end game. I will say, I don't really want to call it a talent, but that thing that I do may stem from the fact that I have my roots in being a writer. I've written a couple of books and I got my start in comics originally. That was my first real job in my field out of college, was working for a comic publisher. So my brain immediately goes to, the narrative beats and where the story's heading. And when I write stories, I always write the ending first. So you'll always see me look at things in games and be like, okay, how is this showing us what the ending is? How does this allude to the ending? How are we getting to that destination at the very end? Just because like how I write things. I don't think we can go much farther beyond the end of the game.
Yeah. Honestly, this whole Yap Fest has been just like super enlightening in like a different way. Cause like I felt like I understood this story, and then hearing how your brain works, it's like, oh damn, like you just think of it in such a different way. It's so cool.
Yeah, but I didn't remember most of the stories. So this was very helpful to have you here to be like, hey, no, pay attention to what's actually going on. But I'm like, but shiny. Shiny.
Surely I got everything right and didn't entirely mislead you on points of the story. But yeah, thank you so much for yapping with me about this. It's been a long, oh my gosh, we've been here for over an hour. I really appreciate you talking with me about this stuff. It's fun to pick your brain.
I think it's really fun to be able to discuss video games in general. And this is my first foray into talking about Wuthering Waves outside of Discord, and it's been really fun. Like I said, Rena Sita has been a very pleasant surprise. I've had a lot of fun with this region. Obviously, we had a lot of fun picking apart the story. The combat's been really fun. The exploration's been really fun. Like all around, it's a really good patch. Well, version, multiple patches.
Yeah, it's been multiple. Like the entire 2.x series has been incredible. It was a good time though. I'm excited for 2.3 and beyond. I just want to see like what else they're cooking with this whole thing, especially because we haven't really like dealt with the problem of the order, right? Like we still have that to look forward to.
Yeah. I wonder, actually, we've got one more thing we could wrap up with. Maybe predicting what might come around.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. So Cristoforo, we ended off with like that guy. We haven't seen him in a minute, right? Well, maybe we did in 2.1. I actually didn't finish that one entirely yet, so still working on it. But I know that we had a lot to do with like for Lovan Cristoforo still in the region, and then we also have the order to figure out. We'll probably pay a visit to the Montellis, I would imagine, again, since we have two characters that are with or like alongside the Montellis. We have Chakona and Zani releasing next patch, so I feel like we'll get to know a bit more about them. That'll be cool.
I was thinking that might involve Rover and even Cartethyia maybe exposing the order.
Ooh, okay, that'd be cool.
Because now we have the interesting thing is right, like the Physalia family has been demonized for its relationship with the so-called Threnodian.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and I'm wondering if what they'll do is we'll start to form an alliance between Carlotta and Cantarella, and maybe the goal is to overthrow the order and reveal the truth of what happened to the Sentinel and reveal Cartethyia as, you know, the true resonator of the Sentinel.
Yeah, that would be super interesting. I can't wait. The more we talk about this, the more excited I get.
That would be a really fun I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that's kind of my prediction, because that feels like a very natural way to kind of tie things together, all of the things that we've had so far.
100%.
And sort of bring all the casts together and resolve the Sentinel issue and a lot of Renacita's politics, you know, like kind of that all sorted out, and maybe figure out a new way to have Renacita interact with other nations. Maybe Renacita becomes one of the capitals of eco technology or whatnot.
Yeah, maybe. I'm excited to see.
That is one thing we didn't talk about, was like the Nexus.
There's more to there's more to talk about in the future, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, like I feel like you know, the Nexus is a very interesting plot point as well, because it does feel like a point of control for the Order. It seems like a really nice time to sort of deal with the Nexus versus terminals versus resonators versus power for the people kind of thing. It does feel like it might have some very interesting philosophical debates, for lack of a better term. So I'm excited. I'm very excited to see how they wrap this up, because there's obviously still more to do. I know we've had like a really big climactic battle and all that, but there's obviously more to this.
Oh yeah. Well, hopefully I'll see you talking about the next version. Maybe we can get together and talk again if everything works out.
I was thinking about starting to play through the Wuthering Waves story on stream with people.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Apart from, you know, short little interactions like this one, you know, like where we do a little collaboration, little podcasty breakdown kind of thing. Apart from this, it's very difficult to fit anything else into my schedule. So I thought, what if we just share this experience with other people in real time?
That's the best way to do it.
So thanks for inviting me, Brax. I'm glad to be able to share a new gaming experience with you, because so far we haven't had a lot of chances to overlap our interests.
I know. It was, you know, we both took different directions. Well, I mean, we're both kind of at HSR, I guess, too, but...
Yeah, we do have a little bit, but like at the same time, it's like we work in very different avenues. So it's nice to be able to find a place where we have some overlap. And I think Wuthering Waves has a pretty good balance of that.
Oh, 100%.
So I like that. That's cool.
All right.
Yeah, this was fun. Let's do it again.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching.